Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing wonderful, Eric. How are you?
Fantastic.
I was just telling you that my wife got to celebrate her very first Grandmother's Day yesterday with our 5-month-old granddaughter virtually. So it was a fun weekend, and we still got my mom at age 89 with grandchildren, great grandchildren, and who knows who else. But it's always wonderful celebrating Mother's Day because to me they're the most important people in the world.
And it's nice that you've got so many generations of it that you can celebrate with.
Yeah, I am. I'm a lucky guy.
Well, today our guest is Nadine Krause from the Holberton School. And this is a amazing school that has sort of turned education on its side. So we're going to be talking about education and Nadine's background and all sorts of fun things. So Nadine, welcome.
Hi, good to be here with you both.
We're so glad you could be here. So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about the Holberton School and what sets it apart?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a nutshell, Holberton School is a 2-year higher education program that focuses specifically on training software engineers. And the model was originally launched out in Silicon Valley 5 years ago. We actually just celebrated our 5th birthday, fittingly on May the 4th. In New Haven, we have opened our doors as a nonprofit as of January 2019. So we have the school right here in our state of Connecticut, which is awesome. How I got connected with it, before I tell you more about the school, is I actually, ironically enough, don't have a background in education nor in software engineering, but I've always had a focus on investing in others and helping others reach their potential, whatever that might mean, whether that's in a professional setting or a personal setting. And when I found out about this opportunity while still working in corporate America, doing a variety of different things, including developing leadership development and talent programs, among other things, I was really excited to learn about this education model because I felt in many ways it tapped into human potential in a different way. Obviously, being still specifically focused on creating the next generation of software engineers, but I just really felt that specifically the approach to education along with the broader model of higher education was really powerful. So I signed on, when was it at this point? September 2018, after doing a number of different things throughout my career prior to that. And I haven't looked back since and have really enjoyed also, working with the organization, kind of growing its global footprint because we are now, I think, in over 4 countries with 10 plus campuses. We just announced another one opening up in Uruguay. So we definitely have a presence in Latin America. We just announced this year that we're going to be opening up in Puerto Rico. And so far, we also have campuses in Colombia, Tunisia. We're opening up a model that we're testing in Lebanon. And we have another campus in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then, of course, our mothership in San Francisco.
That's fantastic. It's truly a global organization. And now you had mentioned that it's a different model of education. Your students don't have traditional classes, do they?
That's right. So the co-founders of the school, who are still leading the organization now, basically both of them, have a background as software engineers and helping their organizations grow, before they founded the school. And they really tried to solve 3 problems through this educational model. Number one, they found very quickly that there just was not enough talent that was available for hire in this field. And if you look at the numbers, it's anywhere from 1 million to probably close to 2 million at this point in time vacancies that we're going to have by 2026 and beyond, just because technology is changing so much of what's happening in our world, if not everything, right? We're seeing that even now with this global epidemic, how much we're dependent on technology every day. So number one was just not enough volume of hireable talent. Number two was even if they had the right technical skills, or better technical skills. They just didn't have the right kind of technical skills, and they didn't necessarily have the professional and soft skills that allowed early career folks to succeed as software engineers in this field. And the third thing was that, for the most part, they were just interviewing white men. And, we all know anytime we're crafting solutions, including things that we're trying to solve through technology, we need people from different backgrounds who have had different experiences, who approach problems from different angles to really come up with complete solutions and to also challenge some of the solutions we come up with. So there's just a dimensionality that was missing and a diversity that was missing. And so they said, you know what? We're going to do education differently. And so, as you said, Eric, absolutely, our students learn in a way that translates directly to the experiences and the expectations they're going to come across once they leave our school. So we don't have traditional classes, nor do we have traditional teachers. We teach in a way that is project-based and leverages peer learning in a way that's super hands-on, so that you learn not only the deep technical skills, but you also learn the professional and soft skills along the way that are so important in a workplace setting, right? You're basically, every day, even the two of you, working on projects with people, right? So we got to get those bases covered. And through the hands-on approach and that project-based approach, our students learn seamlessly over time because they keep applying what they're learning. And they're learning the time management, the project management skills. They're learning the collaboration skills and the communication skills that are needed to ultimately be able to explain complex technical concepts and or their ideas for products and improvements to different audiences. So we really focus on all of that in our model.
Yeah, I noticed
And
by going to your website, your approach is amazing. Learning by doing, the project-based learning, and you have a list right on that page of examples of projects. Because I was trying to say, okay, what kind of projects would you have there? And you have building a video game, you have building secure infrastructures, cloning a marketplace, creating facial recognition engines, code your own shell, build your own blockchain. I would imagine a lot of people are just interested in, even if they don't know that at all, they're interested in just learning about that. And then the learning from others approach, where you're working with each other, and you have the little thing in there saying ask about the checker, because they have to write all this code and so on and so forth.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about all that.
Yeah, so I should probably add that we are what's considered a full stack software engineering program. Most of us have probably heard of like full stack web or full stack web applications, which basically means, you cover all of the different technologies and aspects that go into web applications and mobile applications. We are a full stack software engineering program, meaning that we cover so much more ground. So when we first started to respond to the shortage of talent in this space, not just for the tech industry, but obviously for companies across all industries. Boot camps, tech boot camps, coding boot camps were sort of the first solution. They're usually 3 months in length, and they just don't cover that much ground. So we really try to get into a lot of different parts of engineering, even if it is just foundationally. And then during the second year of the program, students have an opportunity to specialize. So we cover the front end, databases, the back end, data security, infrastructure, DevOps or development operations. What does it take to take something from an idea to, a product, and how do you work with people throughout that, to really give our students enough context so that even if they don't necessarily know the answer, they at least know to ask better questions. And they can draw from that context. And we also teach our students how to learn, which I think is really important, because we know that technology is going to continue evolving, right? And every company has a different set of technologies that they're using and combining, or that they've built by themselves. So it's really important that our students can kind of figure things out very quickly once they leave our school. And so we have them working on pretty big projects. One of them is cloning the Airbnb app or platform, right? And so they're combining different skills, and again, they're asking different questions, and they're doing what's called test-driven development, where they're really along the way, as they're building something, testing it, which many of the traditional higher education programs won't even get into, right? And again, everything they're learning sort of builds on each other, but it also has enough variety because we know that when we're in a workplace, we're going to be working on any number of different things at any given point in time. And so, again, our students learn to manage all of that and to also be in a deadline-driven environment. With traditional college courses, there's a bit more focus on theory, I would say, and the pace is a little bit different. And we do have many students in our program that said, that passive style of learning just didn't work for me. I needed to work hands-on. I needed to really see what I was learning. And I needed something that was a little bit more challenging. And most of the students who did try traditional higher education first say that they've learned more in the first 3 months that they did in like 3 semesters of a more traditional education. So from what we can see, it works. And to your point, and that's what I'm hearing in your voice, it's also really exciting to learn in that way.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, the other neat thing about this whole thing is your very, very unique model as far as funding their education, called the deferred tuition model. So this is something where you're actually not even receiving tuition from your students until after they get a job, and it's based upon them being successful. It's just a really, really neat model. So obviously that sets you apart as a trendsetter in the education business, but I think due to the fact that a lot of people right now are going to be hurting, getting financial help or being able to defer your tuition is going to become a big, big thing, and you are way ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you saw that, and that is definitely one of the things that we talk about. There's really 3 things that set us apart. This is the second one, and I'll talk about the third one in a moment, but we have, as you called it, and as we call it, an income share agreement, which means that there's no upfront fees whatsoever. Our students don't pay a dime until they start working, until they start earning a salary above a certain threshold. And then they share a set portion, a percentage of their income for a set amount of time. And for us, it's 17% for 3.5 years. And, sometimes I get the question, well, how is that fair? Because that means everybody's going to end up paying a different amount for their education, which I personally feel that, by us tying our success to our student success and vice versa, we're actually in a much better position, and it's a much more fair way of charging our students for the education. And then when you think about how traditional tuition works, nobody actually pays the same amount because colleges and universities set their own tuition. Financial aid packages are going to look different, and they're on current factors versus future factors, how somebody's going to do after they receive that education. And, there's a number of different factors that influence just how much somebody's going to be paying for college and whether or not they're going to be able to pay for college. And, so we definitely took a different approach, and we said, if you don't land, you don't pay us in a lot of ways. But we also know that with the skills that we're equipping our students with across the board and with the support that we provide as they transition, and with, the big need that is out there, that for the most part, they're going to be fine. And, even now, the tech industry, I would say, is still one of the more secure ones, especially because of how technology is enabling, kind of telecommuting and whatnot.
Yeah, one of the things I really love about the deferred model is that it really does force Holberton to remain relevant and to teach up-to-date technologies and methods. Because if your graduates can't get jobs and they don't succeed, neither do you. Whereas the traditional educational model, they're teaching things, years behind where the cutting edge is, and it doesn't affect the college any. They have no skin in the game.
That's right.
And it's really amazing, how technologies are being applied now and how important these skills are, especially as so many retailers are now going to kiosk and app-based sales models. One of the things that absolutely blew me away is that as the unemployment system changed, states like Connecticut and New Jersey were dealing with 40-year-old technology that they couldn't update well. And in order to make the changes that they needed to, they actually built a second platform on top of Salesforce.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's mind blowing, and I think that's one of the really interesting things right now, right? Is that we really are in a time, and it's been called officially like a fourth industrial revolution. In some ways, if you look at the technologies that are coming out and that are being developed today, we're way past that. But when you look at where especially some of our bigger companies are right now, governments included, right? And maybe especially so because they have not had the funds to invest over time in evolving technology infrastructure. We're like not in the fourth industrial revolution. In some cases, we're like 20, 30 years behind, right? And there's a lot of challenges with that. Obviously, security and speed being one of them, efficiency being another one, but it's also the kind of how you manage from getting from here to there being sort of the future where we can really leverage technology and the advancements that we're seeing in ways that are totally revolutionary, in ways that we maybe can't even imagine today. That is a huge way to go. And to your point, we need people that have not only the relevant technical skills and the abilities to sort of keep pace with that, right? Which is why, on the one hand, we make sure that we work with industry experts across the board who work in different segments of the technology industry to help us with our curriculum, to overhaul it every so often, and to also make sure that our specializations are focused on the things that are evolving at this point in time, right? So machine learning being one of them, AR, VR being another one, blockchain, etc. But it's also about the soft skills needed to actually lead through those transitions, the critical thinking skills and whatnot. And, when you look at what's been out there for some time, there's like really three things that we're hearing, right? Jobs will go away and there will just be less jobs for people because people are going to be replaced by machines and technology, or jobs will be gained and or replaced, but they're going to be different jobs and they will require different jobs. And the sort of moral of the story is that people will become less and less important. But I would actually say it's the opposite, because it's really the things that machines can't yet do and will likely not be able to do for a really long time that we need people to do more and more of. And we're hoping to, train people who really have those critical thinking skills and the leadership skills to be able to help current organizations, current industries, to kind of get from this pre-fourth industrial revolution stage to what is possible, what is truly possible now and going to be possible in the future with technology. So to me, that's a really interesting conversation, and how different segments of the population are, impacted, and to see kind of both the risks and the opportunities there.
Right. And that's something, the deferred payment helps out, because traditional education has been, you had to be able to afford this, and there were entire segments of the population that could not. And yet,
Right.
with this model, everybody can afford to go to the school and get the education that they need. And I also love the fact that you also focus on the soft skills. A recent survey done by LinkedIn found that the single most lacking skill that employers were looking for was communications. And by having your students work on projects together and in teams, it sort of forces them to learn how they communicate, how others communicate, and to bridge that gap.
Yeah. And it's also about the sense that you are a part of a greater whole. Like, we have such a focus on community at Holberton as part of our peer learning model that exists both within each cohort, but also across cohorts and globally across campuses. Our mascot is the seahorse. We've named him Holby recently. And, we always say no seahorse left behind, because the peers that you're leaving behind early on, you're not going to be able to benefit from their perspective, their approach to problem solving, and their support later on. So you have a vested interest in making sure that everybody's succeeding along with you. And that type of mindset, that's not just about sort of cooperation, but that's about true collaboration and community, is important as well when you think about the ingredients that are relevant in a professional relationship, right? The trust building and, again, the collaboration and, as you said, the communication. And because it goes beyond being able to communicate technical concepts, it's how do you navigate when things get rough or when you have a tough working relationship. So we really weave all of that into how we coach and support our students, both formally and informally. And that's the part that really I enjoyed, coming from a background of, again, investing in people and helping people grow in those ways. So I would agree. And then the third thing that we haven't touched on yet that kind of goes to what you were just saying, Eric, about accessibility is our application process, our admissions process. So we even kind of redesigned and flipped that on its head, because we said, in order to truly remove the barriers to higher education and make this accessible to people from all walks of life, we must de-emphasize previous experience. And when you ultimately think about the predictors of success, it's really, do you have the baseline aptitude or talent to do something, right? And some people might be great for software engineering, maybe not great for other things, and vice versa. But you have the baseline talent, in our case, to become a software engineer, to be a problem solver, and you enjoy that. And then you have the motivation to challenge yourself. So we generally have kind of two categories of applicants, maybe on a spectrum, right? Some folks are kind of really good with this stuff. They might have had some prior exposure, and they're going to whiz through our application, which works like a series of challenges that you have to solve and kind of projects that you're working on. And it's not easy, and you learn the basics of coding along the way, so you kind of have to stick with it. Or you're somebody who's new to this, but who realizes they enjoy it, and you have so much commitment and so much motivation to change your circumstances and to be a part of this next generation of software engineers, that you kind of give it your all and you stick with it. Those people tend to get accepted to the school, and we don't collect any information about, again, their prior experience, their gender, their race, their country of origin, anything like that, right? We're very, very open, and we just want to make sure that you've got what it takes to be in this program.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic way to do it, because you're opening it up to people that ordinarily would not have had a chance to get into a program like this. And even if they decide it's not for them, they're learning things just through the application process.
That's right. And sometimes it's a valuable thing to be able to say, you know what, I tried it, I thought this could be for me, and it's not, right? So I agree with you. And it also demystifies what software engineering is about for those that have had very little exposure to it. And of course, there's a lot of free online resources as well, but sometimes you're hesitant to get into something. So I would agree with you. We kind of show people exactly how the program works through the application, and we teach them the skill. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure, as you say, even if they go through it and they decide that it's not for them, they're better off for having gone through that, especially probably because they're interested in technology in the first place, and they'll have a better understanding moving ahead. But that's one thing that they realize, they can take with them as far as the experience goes too. So
Right. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And we focused a lot on the technical aspect of this, but this is a model that can be emulated by other schools for other topics and subjects. And when there's so much debate over what the value of a college education is now, this really shows what the future of education can be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, when we think about how kind of this sort of formalized version, curated version of education came about, there's really two avenues, right? There's sort of like the great thinkers and the great academics, the people from my homeland, from Germany, that were like always thinking about things that probably the majority of things weren't thinking about. And then that's, part of what shaped education. And then there's this whole other side of things, which is basically like, we need to prepare people to do the work that we need to grow as societies, economies, whatever, right? Perfect example is that, gosh, I can't remember exactly what year it was, whenever submarines were booming, right? Military basically went to Yale and said, we need you to create an engineering school. We need more engineers. And Yale was like, that's not what we do. And finally, after kind of back and forth, that's how the University of New Haven was actually born, because they said, you know what, we are truly an academic institution. We consider ourselves, you know, thought leaders and whatever, but we will help you with a more vocational focus, I guess. And again, that's how UNH was born, and that's why they still to this day have a great focus on engineering. But you know, we need education to first and foremost prepare us to be able to offer our talents in the form of work in this world. And when you look at the numbers of kind of both, you know, how many people are ultimately graduating with a degree, and then the types of earnings they can see in the first few years after college, people are earning minimum wage, because we're not constructing education today, by and large, right? I mean, there are educational models out there that work very well and that have more of that sort of like hands-on focus and really are trying to get people ready for the workforce. But by and large, you know, we kind of, there's a gap. It's great to create great thinkers, but what are the applied skills and in some cases designations, certifications, whatever that somebody's graduating with that's going to allow them to hit the ground running? So, you know, I agree with you. We are right now focused on software engineering. We agree that there's application across the board. And there's some fields where this type of education will never make sense, and or where we definitely want a more formalized way of vetting people. Thinking of, you know, lawyers and surgeons, but you know, by and large, there's definitely an opportunity to rethink education and to kind of do a double take and to say, is it aligning with the workforce that we need to create?
Yeah, that's so important. I was actually involved with a program at Wesleyan a number of years back where they were hiring actual published writers and artists to teach these classes. This was specifically to elementary school students where they were teaching writing and art. And I remember a committee meeting where they were trying to determine how much they were going to pay the writers and artists. And at one point, somebody actually said, well, we can't pay them that much because then they'll be making as much as real teachers. And it's like that disconnect between people who were studying to teach something and people that were actually doing it.
Yeah.
Boggled my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a really great point because, as I said, our program is developed in partnership with actual software engineers. And, I mean, we have a head of education at each of our campuses, and we have a team, a whole curriculum team that works with, you know, the industry experts to develop the curriculum and to develop the, you know, education methodology. But none of them are teachers in that sense. You know, we're just doing what makes sense in the industry for the industry.
All right. We're just about at the end of our time. So, for any of our listeners that want to get more information about the Holberton School or possibly apply to be a student there, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, we are at www.holbertonschool.com, and it's spelled Holberton, named after Betty Holberton, who is a woman who was a pioneer in this field, actually, very early on. And we have a cohort that's coming up this June. We're right now considering whether or not we can move forward with it given the current circumstances. But we have another cohort starting for September, and applications are still open for both of those cohorts, and we'll be opening up for our January 21 cohort soon as well. There's tons of information. If you go to the New Haven page, you can also register for upcoming events. Tonight we're actually doing a talk about data science. That you can also find on Meetup that is open to the public. But yeah, I definitely hope that you will check it out. And for those of you who are looking to hire software engineering talent, we're open to those conversations as well. And you can find contact information on the website.
Fantastic. Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners from today?
Well, first of all, Nadine, it's just so great learning about all this and what you're doing. But taking a look at this when I first started, went to the website, you're a benchmark for what's going on now and what's moving ahead. And the fact that you're giving people practical experience entering the workforce, teaching them by problem solving and doing things together, and having the deferred tuition program basically makes you partners in success. It's just a fantastic model, and congratulations for 5 years in, and you're 5 years ahead of where most of the world is as a result of it.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you.
You approve that message.
Yeah, I think for our listeners, I think one of the big takeaways for today is not just the importance of technology in virtually every business that is going forward today, but also how the educational model can be flipped around and find new ways to get people into higher education and get them the skills they really need to survive. So I love hearing about the Holberton School, and I know we barely touched the surface of some of the conversations we've had, so I hope you'll come back again.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure having this conversation with both of you, and as you well know, I love talking about what we do, so I'm happy to chat more anytime.
Thanks so much. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.